My name is Elena Ramirez, and if you ask anyone who's known me more than 5 minutes, they'd probably tell you the same three things. I'm loyal to a fault, I take care of the people I love, and I don't scare easily. I wasn't always like that. Life shaped me into it. 40 years of friendship, marriage, raising my own kids, and now, in this weird, unexpected chapter, helping raise someone else's. That someone is Marcus. He's not my child by blood, but he might as well be. I've known him since he was only hours old, tiny and wrinkled and blinking up at the world like it was too bright and too confusing. His mother, my best friend since middle school, was 42 when she had him. A miracle baby we all prayed for and then loved instantly. My husband and I were the fourth and fifth people to hold him. I still remember how his fingers curled around my thumb, like he already knew he was safe with me. 8 years later, he still has that same way of curling himself into people he trusts. Except now he has long, wild red hair, bright green eyes, and the palest skin you've ever seen. He looks like he wandered straight out of an old Irish folk tale. Meanwhile, I look like the complete opposite. I'm a 6-foot, 300-pound Hispanic woman who works rotations in the oil fields. You can guess the type. Boots, flannel, strong arms, tired eyes. People see me and immediately form an opinion. Sometimes that opinion's right. Sometimes it's dead wrong. But to Marcus? I'm the person who builds Lego towers with him, who relearned Minecraft after forgetting every single thing about it, who holds the Nintendo controller sideways because my hands are too big for the tiny buttons. I'm the person who shows up when his parents need a break, when they want a date night, or when they're just exhausted from the chaos of parenting at almost 50. I never asked for this role, but I cherish it. My kids are grown, out living their own lives, and having Marcus around fills a part of the house that got quiet too fast. My husband loves it too. He treats Marcus like a grandson even though we're way too young for that title, at least in our own minds. And that brings me to the day everything went sideways. It was one of my off weeks, meaning I was home from the fields and had more free time than I knew what to do with. Marcus's parents asked if I could take him for the afternoon, and of course I said yes. We decided to head to the park near my place. A big open area with slides, swings, and those ridiculous climbing nets that look like half-finished spider webs. He ran straight toward the jungle gym, already laughing, already trying to show off, already yelling, "Elena, watch this," at a volume usually reserved for airplanes taking off. He was having the time of his life. And I was content sitting on a nearby bench, sipping iced tea from a thermos, just letting him be a kid. Sometimes you don't realize you're smiling until your cheeks hurt. That was me, watching him wobble across a rope bridge like he was on some epic quest. When it was time to leave, I called out to him. "All right, buddy. 5-minute warning. Let's wrap it up." He ignored me. Classic 8-year-old move. "Marcus, I tried again. We're going. Your mom will want an update." Still nothing. I walked closer and saw that mischievous look he gets. The one where he knows I can't catch him unless I put real effort into it, and he also knows I'm willing to. And before I could say another word, he bolted. So I chased him. He shrieked with laughter, nearly tripped over his own feet, and when I reached him, I scooped him up like a sack of potatoes and threw him over my shoulder. He was giggling, kicking, going limp one moment and stiff the next like a kid who knows exactly how to make himself heavier just for the drama of it. Every person in the park could see he was playing. It was obvious. Well, to almost everyone. Out of nowhere, a woman stormed up to me like she'd been launched from a cannon. Short blonde hair, expensive gym clothes. The type of woman who looks like she corrects teachers at parent-teacher conferences. She jabbed a finger at me and snapped, "Put him down." I froze for half a second, not scared, just confused. I set Marcus down gently, thinking maybe she'd mistaken the situation. It happens. Big woman, small kid, different ethnicities. People jump to conclusions all the time. But before I could explain anything, she was already pulling out her phone. "I've called the police," she barked. "I saw you grab him. I saw him struggling." Marcus tried to step behind me, instinctively reaching for my hand, but she lunged forward and grabbed his arm. Hard. Hard enough that his skin reddened instantly. Hard enough that he yelped. "Let him go," I told her, my voice low, calm, but very clear. "You need to let go of him. Now." He didn't. She tried to pull him away from me, and that's when everything in my body switched from confusion to instinct. The instinct to protect him. "Ma'am," I said, "if you don't release him, we're going to have a physical problem." She froze. Finally, she let go. Marcus ran behind me like I was a shield, And in that moment, that's exactly what I was. She didn't back off though. She just stepped away far enough to record me, narrating something dramatic for her camera. You could practically hear the self-righteous adrenaline buzzing in her voice. Meanwhile, I called my husband. I wanted him to know what was going on before things escalated. And escalate they did. 2 police cars pulled up minutes later. Lights flashing. People staring. It felt like the world zoomed in on us. The officers separated us immediately. One taking me a short distance away, one talking to her, one kneeling down to check on Marcus. I kept my answers simple. Calm. Honest. When they asked who I was to him, I explained. When they asked if I had permission to be with him, I gave them the names of his parents, their phone numbers, everything they needed. Then my husband arrived. If you've never seen an angry Welshman, let me tell you, it's a particular kind of wildfire. He's small but fierce, the kind of person who can make a drill sergeant apologize without yelling. The cops didn't intimidate him one bit. He went straight to the officer speaking to me and said, "I have proof." He pulled up his phone and started scrolling through albums. 9 years worth of photos of me and Marcus. Birthdays. Playdates. Family dinners. Christmas mornings. Then he pointed to Marcus's arm, already bruising where the woman had grabbed him. "She did that," he said, flat and furious. "Not her. And she was just trying to help, was she?" The officers looked at each other. Their expressions shifted. Everything changed in about 10 seconds. Suddenly, the questions aimed at me stopped sounding suspicious. Suddenly, the woman's tone of concern didn't seem so heroic. Suddenly, her recording didn't protect her. It incriminated her. And when the officers approached her, I watched her face go pale. Because they weren't thanking her. They were cuffing her. Right there in the middle of the park. Her eyes got wide. Her voice went high. "You can't arrest me. I was trying to save him." But the bruise on Marcus's arm told a very different story. They led her to the cop car. She kept yelling, but honestly I stopped listening. My adrenaline was crashing and all I wanted to do was go home, hold Marcus, and reassure him that the world wasn't full of people who grabbed kids just to feel like heroes. Even after everything calmed down, I couldn't shake the question buzzing in my head. Did I do something wrong? Could I have handled it differently? Could I have prevented the whole thing? And that's where the story really begins. The truth is, I replayed the moment over and over in my head later that night. The house was quiet. Marcus had finally calmed down after some ice cream, cartoons, and enough reassurance to settle his nerves. He stayed close to me even at home, closer than usual, as if he needed confirmation I wasn't going anywhere. My husband had already called his parents to explain everything, and they were racing home early from their weekend trip. But me, I sat there in the dim light of the living room, that familiar soft hum of the ceiling fan filling the space, staring at the faint bruise on his arm and feeling a knot tightening in my chest. I'm not someone who backs away from conflict. I never have been. Working in the oil fields teaches you real quick that hesitation can be dangerous. You speak up, you take action, you protect your own. That's the unwritten rule we all live by. But the park wasn't an oil field, and this wasn't a crew member or a coworker. This was an 8-year-old kid who trusted me more than almost anyone in his world. And a stranger who thought she knew the story just by looking at us. That's what kept bothering me, that she didn't see a child giggling on my shoulder. She didn't see 40 years of friendship between me and his mother. She didn't see the thousands of days and nights where I'd been part of his little life. She just saw a big woman who didn't look like him. And she assumed the worst. I know people make mistakes. I know fear and instinct can take over. I know some people think they're helping. But there's a line between concern and interference, between vigilance and vigilante, and she sprinted past that line without a second thought. Still, I kept asking myself the same thing. Was I the problem? Was I too blunt? Too intimidating? Too ready to defend him? That question dug at me until early morning, when exhaustion finally dragged me into sleep. By the next day, Marcus's parents were home. His mother hugged him so tightly I thought she'd squeeze the air out of him. His dad held him afterward, rubbing slow circles on his back the way he did when Marcus was a toddler. Then they turned to me, eyes full of gratitude and anger and relief all at once, and I realized something. They weren't upset at me. They weren't even upset at the woman. They were upset at the world that forced their son to be scared like that. We sat at the kitchen table after Marcus went upstairs to play, And his mom, my oldest friend, reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Elena," she said softly, "you protected my child. I don't care what some stranger thought she saw. You did right." Her husband nodded. "I'm glad you said something to her. You told her to stop." He didn't. She chose that path. I let their words sink in, even though part of me still felt the weight of the situation. It's one thing to stand up for someone. It's another to do it while second-guessing every move you made. Later that afternoon, Marcus was drawing at the kitchen counter, legs swinging off the chair, humming to himself in that distracted kid way. He kept glancing at me and eventually he asked, "Am I in trouble?" That hit harder than anything else. I crouched down beside him so we were eye level. "No, buddy. You're not in trouble at all. Grown-ups messed up yesterday. Not you." His little shoulders relaxed. "I knew you'd protect me," he said. And that was it, the words that untangled everything I'd been wrestling with. He knew I'd protect him. He didn't even question it. And somehow, that mattered more than the judgment of a stranger who didn't know me, didn't know him, and didn't stop to think before inserting herself into something she didn't understand. A week passed. Life returned to normal. Or as normal as it gets when you have an energetic 8-year-old in your orbit. I settled back into my routine. Work, home, sleep, repeat. But the memory of that moment lingered like a bruise of its own. Not painful but visible. Then came the unexpected part of the story. I was at the grocery store pushing a cart through the produce section, minding my own business, when I heard someone call out, "Hey!" My stomach sank before I even turned around. It was her. The woman from the park. No police. No crowd. No cameras. Just her, looking smaller, quieter, and somehow older. She walked up slowly, hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "I wanted to talk to you," she said, and for a second I didn't know whether to brace myself or walk away. But her tone wasn't loud or righteous or angry. It was apologetic. "I overreacted," she whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I really did. And when the officers talked to me later, I realized how wrong I was." I stayed quiet. I wasn't sure what she expected from me. He swallowed. "I'm sorry I scared him. I'm sorry I judged you." Then she paused, eyes softening. "I'm sorry I grabbed him. That was too far." Her voice cracked. And just like that, I saw the truth. She wasn't evil or hateful or malicious. He was scared. And she'd acted on fear instead of thought. I let out a slow breath. "Thank you for saying that," I told her. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't anger. Just acknowledgement, the only thing I could offer. She nodded once, almost gratefully, and walked off. I didn't tell Marcus about it. He didn't need that weight on his shoulders. Kids deserve to feel safe without worrying about the complicated emotions of adults who make mistakes. But I carried that moment with me. Not because it absolved her, but because it reminded me that everyone's story is bigger than the worst thing they do on a bad day. Still, I kept thinking about the original questions. Was I the asshole? Should I have handled it better? Did I mess up? Those questions stayed with me until the day Marcus turned 9. We were at his birthday party, surrounded by balloons, kids, laughter, cheap pizza, and the usual chaos, when he ran up to me holding a brand new Lego set. "Can we build this together?" he asked. "Of course," I said, and he grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the table. And in that small, ordinary moment, his clarity became mine. Protecting a child is never the wrong choice. Standing up against someone hurting them, whether intentionally or accidentally, is never being an asshole. I didn't escalate. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten until she physically grabbed him. I did what any responsible adult would do. And in the eyes of the kid I love like family, I did exactly what he needed. That's when I realized the only opinion that truly mattered was his. As the months passed, the whole incident faded into something that lived more in memory than in conversation. Life has a way of doing that, taking the sharp edges off the moments that once cut you. But some experiences don't really disappear. They settle under the surface, waiting for the quiet moments when your mind wanders. And I'll admit, sometimes when I'd see kids run around the park, or a parent chasing after their toddler, or even a stranger glancing a little too hard in my direction, the old anxiety would tug at me. Would people assume the worst again? Would someone jump to a conclusion without stopping to ask? Would I find myself reliving the chaos of that day? But every time those thoughts crept in, something else pushed them back down. Marcus's laughter. The way he'd yell, "Elena, watch this." The way he'd fall asleep on the couch beside me, drooling on my sleeve like it was the most natural thing in the world. The way he'd lean into me when he was tired. The way he trusted me without hesitation. Trust like that is grounding. It pulls you back to what matters. One evening, a few months after everything had happened, Marcus was at my house again. His parents had a late meeting, so we spent the afternoon baking cookies. Or at least attempting to. He had flour on his face, chocolate on his hands, and somehow managed to get both in his hair. I don't know how a child can make a mess in places that shouldn't logically be possible, but Marcus is gifted that way. As we waited for the cookies to cool, he asked out of nowhere, "Why did that lady think you were bad?" The question hit me sideways. Kids don't forget. They don't always talk about things when they happen, but the thoughts sit there, simmering until they spill over. I sat beside him at the counter. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said gently. "But she was yelling," he said. "She said you were hurting me." "I know," I replied. "But she didn't know the truth. She didn't know us. She thought she saw something she didn't." He frowned. "That doesn't seem fair." "It's not," I said honestly. "But we can't control what people assume. We can only control what we do." He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded, satisfied with the answer in that uncomplicated way kids have when something feels true. He grabbed a cookie before it cooled properly, burned his fingers, yelped dramatically, and ran for the fridge to stick his hand against a cold juice box. Crisis averted. Later that night, I tucked him into the guest bedroom he always claimed as his own. He wrapped himself in the blanket like a burrito, only his eyes peeking out. "Elena," he said softly. "Yeah, buddy. You're never going to let anyone take me, right?" The weight of that question settled into my chest. I'm not his mother. I'm not his guardian. But in his world, I am one of the safest people he knows. I sat next to him and brushed his ridiculous red hair off his forehead. "No," I said. "Never. I'll always protect you." He nodded, closed his eyes, and within seconds, truly seconds, he was asleep. And I sat there looking at him in the glow of the nightlight, realizing that everything I had beat myself up about, every doubt, every question, every replay of that moment at the park, none of it mattered to him. To him, the world was simple. I was someone who kept him safe. Someone who made him feel protected. Someone who would stand between him and anything frightening. And maybe that's the only job that mattered. Still, life has a way of testing those convictions. It was about a year later when I found myself in a situation that brought back the memory of that day, but in a completely different way. Marcus was 10 now. Taller, louder, somehow both wiser and more chaotic at the same time. We were back at the same park. The same swings. The same jungle gym. It was a normal, calm afternoon. Until a boy around Marcus's age shoved him off the slide ladder. It wasn't playful. It wasn't teasing. It was mean. Deliberate. Marcus hit the ground hard and looked stunned, not hurt badly but shocked. Before I even stepped forward, he looked at the kid and said, "Hey, that wasn't nice." And what did I do? I didn't yell. I didn't confront the kid. I didn't rush in ready to defend. I waited. Because Marcus had a voice now. He had confidence. And he had the space to stand up for himself. The kid just rolled his eyes and walked away. And Marcus brushed off his shorts, turned to me, and shrugged like it was no big deal. Growing up has a funny way of sneaking past you. Later, when we got in the car, he said, "See? I handled it." Proud. Matter of fact. I smiled. "You did. But if he touched me again," he added, "I was gonna tell you." And I laughed. Fair enough. But as we drove home, it struck me that all the fear I had after that day in the park, the fear of being judged, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being seen as something dangerous, had slowly been replaced by something else. The confidence that I had done the right thing. The clarity that protecting a child is not something to apologize for. And the understanding that the people who matter, the parents, the child, the people who truly know me, never question my actions for a second. I wasn't the villain in that story. I wasn't the aggressor. I wasn't the one who crossed the line. I was a woman caring for a child she loved, a child she'd known since his very first breath, a child she'd promised to protect long before he learned to speak. And I kept that promise. Years went by. Marcus kept growing. The long red hair stayed, the freckles multiplied, his laugh deepened, his legs got too long to comfortably sit in my lap even though he still tried sometimes. He got into middle school, then high school, and suddenly he wasn't a little kid anymore. But he still came over. Still played games with me. Still stole my snacks. Still hugged me like he meant it. One day when he was about 15, taller than me now, he said, "Hey, remember when that lady thought you kidnapped me?" He laughed. Laughed. As if it were a distant memory instead of a traumatic moment. "Yeah," I said. "I remember." He nudged my shoulder. "Thanks for not letting her take me." I looked at him, this lanky teenager with the same green eyes and the same heart, and said, "I'd do it again in a heartbeat." He grinned. "I know." And that right there settled the last piece of doubt I'd ever carried. Sometimes doing the right thing looks wrong to the wrong people. Sometimes protecting someone makes you look like the enemy to someone who doesn't understand. Sometimes standing up for a child means standing out in a crowd. But I'd rather be misunderstood than fail the people who trust me. And Marcus trusted me more than anyone. That's all that ever mattered. As the years kept rolling forward, things changed in all the ways you expect them to. Kids grow up. Adults get older. Friendships shift and mellow and settle into something steady. And every time Marcus hit a new milestone, his first dance, his first heartbreak, the day he got his driver's license, I felt that same pride swell in my chest, the kind only someone who's helped raise a child can understand. But no matter how tall he got or how deep his voice became, whenever he came over, he'd still flop onto my couch, steal my snacks, and ask me to play some video game that required way faster reflexes than I'll ever have again. And sometimes, when he was tired or stressed or just had a tough day, he'd rest his head on my shoulder, the same way he did when he was little. And I'd remember the tiny kid with the bright red hair who used to giggle when I lifted him off the ground. One evening, not long after he turned 17, we were sitting on the porch watching the sun go down. He had a soda. I had coffee. The air smelled like fresh rain waiting to fall. It was one of those rare quiet moments where the world feels like it's taking a slow breath. He glanced over at me and said, "You know, I've been thinking about that day in the park." It had been almost a decade since then, but I raised an eyebrow anyway. "Yeah. What about it?" He shrugged. "I don't remember much. Just feeling scared. And then you telling her to stop. And I remember hiding behind you." He paused. I felt safe. Like nothing could touch me. I didn't say anything right away. I just let him talk. He tapped the can against his knee. "I think that was the first time I realized you weren't just my mom's best friend. You were my family. There are moments in life that sink all the way down to your bones. That was one of them." I swallowed hard, trying not to get emotional. "You've always been family, Marcus." He smiled. "I know. But that was the day I really understood it." We sat there a while longer, just watching the sky shift from orange to purple. And I realized something important. Not just about that day, but about every doubt I'd carried afterward. I hadn't traumatized him. I hadn't scared him. I hadn't made the situation worse. I had protected him. And no matter how many times I questioned myself, wondered whether I'd been too harsh, too physical, too blunt, the truth stayed the same. The only person who truly needed to feel safe that day was the kid standing behind me. And he did. All the judgmental stares, the woman's accusations, the police showing up, none of that mattered in the long run. What mattered was the look on his face when he ran behind me for protection, and the fact that I didn't hesitate to give it. Because sometimes you're not the hero people expect. Sometimes you don't look like the storybook guardian. Sometimes your appearance makes strangers jump to conclusions. But protecting a child isn't about looking gentle. It's about being brave. Being steady. Being someone a kid can run to without thinking twice. Years later, Marcus still ran to me, in his own teenage way, with jokes and sarcasm and late-night conversations about life. But the foundation of trust we built? That stayed the same. Now that he's older, he laughs about that day. He'll joke, "Imagine thinking you'd kidnap me. You'd never get away with it, I talk too much." And I'll laugh back, but somewhere deep down the memory still stays. Not in a painful way, in a grateful one. Because that moment, scary as it was, taught me something I needed to learn. Doing the right thing isn't always comfortable. It isn't always pretty. And it isn't always understood. But it's still the right thing. And if you ever have to choose between being judged by strangers or failing someone who trusts you, choose the judgment. Strangers forget. Kids remember. And their safety is worth every misunderstanding in the world. So, if you're listening to this wondering whether I was the bad guy in this story, the truth is simple. No, I wasn't the asshole. I was an adult doing what any good adult should do. I protected a child who depended on me. I kept him safe. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. The moral of the story? Trust your instincts when it comes to protecting the people who rely on you, especially children. Don't let fear of judgment stop you from doing what's right. People may misunderstand your actions in the moment, but the people who matter, the ones you love and protect, will always remember who stood up for them when it counted. And if you enjoyed this story, or if you want to hear more real-life revenge stories, moral dilemmas, and dramatic tales from Reddit, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This channel is where I bring the wildest, rawest, and most unforgettable stories to life. And trust me, you don't want